Is she the biggest draw in women's tennis right now?
Yes.
Is she bigger than Sabalenka? Is she bigger than Coco?
Dude, it's crazy. She's having the same effect that Fonseca was having, like, on the men's side last year in Miami.
It's like Fonseca, but I think it's bigger than Fonseca.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Like, the Doha, like, crowds were insane for her last week.
If she wins a slam, it would be like one of the biggest things in the world.
Yeah.
Correct.
She's definitely one to watch, obviously because she's so good, but just for the atmosphere. You want to tune into her matches just to see what it's like on the court.
There's got to be like a little jealousy maybe from some of the women. The girl's coming in, she's not top 10, biggest star in the world. All right, don't engage with me.
That is the full breakdown of what Steve Johnson and Sam Querrey said about Alex Eala and why the tennis world reacted the way it did. If this gave you something to think about, hit that like button and drop your take in the comments below. And if you're not subscribed yet, get that done now. More coverage like this is coming all season long. 2 former ATP pros just dropped a statement on their podcast that sent the tennis world into complete chaos. They weren't discussing Alex Eala's ranking or her trophy count. They were talking about something that matters even more than both of those combined. The names they ranked below her in this conversation triggered an absolute fan meltdown. Do you think Alex Eala being a more powerful draw than Coco Gauff and Aryna Sabalenka right now reflects genuine sustained momentum? Or is calling it this early premature? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's break down what happened. Sam Querrey and Steve Johnson, 2 former American tennis pros who've competed at the highest level across every major surface, sat down for the Nothing Major podcast to discuss women's tennis heading into the Indian Wells swing, and then Querrey asked the question that shattered the internet. Is she the biggest draw in women's tennis right now worldwide? He meant Alex Eala. Steve Johnson's response came in one word: yes. Querrey pushed further, asking if she's bigger than Sabalenka, bigger than Coco. Johnson repeated his answer without hesitation: yes. Then he drew a comparison that made the claim even bolder, saying Eala is producing the same effect João Fonseca created on the men's side last year, the Brazilian teenager who turned every venue into a sold-out, standing-room-only event before winning a single major title. Johnson described the scenes in Dubai as standing room only, calling the crowds she's generating across the globe insane and massive. Querrey added that the news surrounding her keeps escalating with every tournament she enters. 2 former ATP professionals went on record declaring that a player ranked outside the top 30 is a bigger draw than the world #1 and the reigning Grand Slam champion, and neither one hedged their position. They weren't adding qualifiers like "but in terms of ranking" or "but when it comes to actual titles." They were talking about pure crowd-drawing power, pure cultural magnetism, pure fan-base energy, and on those metrics, they both reached the same conclusion without any visible hesitation. The fans who heard this reacted in very predictable ways. Those who've been following Eala's rise celebrated it as confirmation of what they already believed. Those who insist that ranking and titles are the only legitimate measures of a player's significance went quiet before eventually erupting in the comment sections. Here's what the quiet before the explosion reveals. When a take is obviously wrong, the response is instant. When a take lands close enough to the truth that people need time to figure out how to counter it, you get that pause. The Eala crowd-drawing argument is genuinely difficult to dispute with actual data because the actual data keeps pointing in the same direction regardless of which tournament you examine. Let's walk through the evidence, because those who want to dismiss the Johnson and Querrey assessment deserve to see it laid out clearly. Melbourne, Australian Open 2026. The side courts where Eala competed were physically overwhelmed by the sheer volume of fans. Standing room only described the situation accurately and conservatively. The Australian Open has hosted tennis for decades, featuring the full roster of the world's best players at the same time, yet the scenes around Eala's matches stood out enough that they became a specific talking point in broadcast coverage separate from the match results themselves. Abu Dhabi. Same story, crowds around her matches generated commentary about the atmosphere being unlike anything typically seen at that event. Players in the draw noticed it, tournament staff noticed it, the broadcast team noticed it, and commented on air. Dubai tournament director Salah Talak, who has been running a prestigious event since 2019, who has hosted world #1s and Grand Slam champions and marquee names across the full WTA rankings, said publicly and on the record that every single match involving Eala was completely sold out. He said people were desperately trying to secure tickets and finding none available. Then he said the thing that puts every other attendance claim in context: in his entire tenure running the tournament, he had never witnessed anything like it. That last part is the detail people keep overlooking in the coverage. Not that it was a great crowd, not that the fans were enthusiastic. He said he had never seen anything like it at his event, which has been running for years with major players coming through every single year. He had never seen anything like what Alex Eala produced. Then she went to Indian Wells. The Indian Wells Tennis Garden broke its own all-time attendance record in 2025 with 54,268 fans across 15 days, and Eala wasn't even in the draw that year. She arrived in 2026 as a seeded player for the first time at a WTA 1000 event, and before her first competitive match was even scheduled, fans were pressing through fences at adjacent practice courts trying to get a view of her warm-up session. Christopher Eubanks, a former ATP pro himself, went on broadcast and said organizers needed to move her onto a bigger court because the volume of fans was a legitimate safety concern, not a crowd management inconvenience, a safety concern at a practice session for a player without a main tour title. Now let's discuss why Eala is doing this when Sabalenka and Gauff, two players with significantly higher rankings and significantly more titles, are not generating the same scenes at the same venues. The straightforward answer is that what Eala represents extends well beyond what she accomplishes on the court, and that's not a criticism of her tennis. Her tennis is genuinely exceptional. She defeated world number 7 Jasmine Paolini in Dubai for her first top 10 win of 2026. She's been reaching quarterfinals and semifinals consistently across a 2026 season that has seen her climb to a career-high 28 in the world. She fights back from deficit positions, she finds ways to win tight third sets, and she plays with a fearlessness that makes every match she's in worth watching. But the crowd numbers are not primarily about the tennis. They're about what she means to a community that is 120 million people strong in the Philippines alone, spread across every continent and mobilized in a way that no other player's fan base is currently replicating at this scale. California, where Indian Wells is held, has close to 2 million Filipino residents. Those fans did not need international flights and visa applications to get to the tennis garden. They were already there. Query's observation on the podcast addresses this directly. He noted that wherever the tournament is, the Filipino community from that part of the world shows up. That's not an accident or a coincidence. That is a fan base with a genuine emotional investment in one specific player's success, showing up at every possible opportunity, regardless of the ticket prices, the travel distance, or the weather conditions in the California desert. Sabalenka is the world number 1. She is one of the most dominant players of the current era. She hits the ball with power that very few players in the history of the sport have matched. She wins titles regularly, and she defends them. Her ranking is legitimate, and her talent is not in question. But her fan base, while loyal, is not generating sold-out practice courts and safety concerns from former ATP professionals. Gauff is the reigning US Open champion and one of the most talked-about young players in the sport. She has crossover appeal and a compelling personal story that has made her a fixture in conversations beyond just tennis. She is playing at home in California during Indian Wells, which means the crowd will be heavily behind her. Yet the conversation around whose matches are generating more raw demand, more people trying to get in, more infrastructure being tested, more safety concerns being raised publicly, keeps landing on Eala. This doesn't mean Eala is a better player than either of them right now. Rankings and match results are clear about that. What it means is that draw power and ranking are not the same thing, and the tennis world is being forced to reckon with that distinction in real time because the gap between them in Eala's case is so wide that it's impossible to ignore. Steve Johnson's Fonseca comparison is the most instructive reference point for understanding what is happening. João Fonseca arrived on the men's tour as a teenager ranked well outside the top 50 and immediately started filling courts at every venue he entered. The crowds, the atmosphere, the fan energy around his matches generated exactly the kind of commentary that Eala is now producing on the women's side. A young player from a country with a passionate fan base, rising fast, playing exciting tennis, and representing something to millions of people that goes beyond wins and losses. Johnson said Eala is having the same effect, and then he said something that the Fonseca comparison doesn't fully capture. The crowds Eala is getting are insane and massive all over the world. The all over the world part is the key phrase there. Fonseca's biggest crowd moments were concentrated in specific markets with large Brazilian communities. Eala's crowds have been documented in Australia, the UAE, and the United States in the span of a few months, with each one generating its own set of "I've never seen anything like this" testimonials from people who run these events for a living. The ranking trajectory matters here too, because it's the mechanism that will allow the crowd phenomenon to merge with the competitive results in a way that creates something genuinely historic. At number 28 in the world, Eala is comfortably inside the top 32 that receive direct entry into Grand Slam main draws. No qualifying, no preliminary rounds. She walks into the main draw at every major seeded and avoids the top players until the later rounds. That structural advantage compounds quickly. Deeper runs at majors mean more points. More points mean higher rankings. Higher rankings mean better seedings. Better seedings mean more favorable draws. The ladder, once you're on it at this level, is designed to reward consistent performance, and Eala's 2026 season has been consistent in a way that her previous seasons were not quite able to sustain. If she can improve the serve, which Martina Navratilova specifically identified as the one technical area still limiting her ceiling, the combination of tactical intelligence, left-handed variety, competitive composure on the physical conditioning she's been building becomes genuinely difficult for top players to manage consistently. Navratilova called her crafty and said the ceiling is high, from a player with 18 Grand Slam titles who spent her career studying opponents and exploiting tactical advantages. That assessment means something specific. The people who are shocked by the Johnson and Query conversation on the podcast are perhaps the ones who have been tracking women's tennis primarily through rankings and title counts. Those are legitimate metrics. They matter, but they are not the only metrics that define a player's significance to the sport at any given moment. Draw power matters. Television ratings matter. Ticket demand matters. Attendance figures matter. All of those things drive the commercial ecosystem that funds prize money, grows broadcast deals, and expands the sport's reach into new markets. On every one of those alternative metrics, Alex Eala is currently outperforming players ranked significantly above her. Two former ATP professionals said it out loud on a podcast with no hesitation. A tournament director in Dubai said he'd never seen anything like it. A former ATP professional at Indian Wells raised safety concerns about her practice sessions, and Martina Navratilova went on the WTA's own platform and said the sky is the limit. The fans are not in shock because this came from nowhere. The fans are in shock because hearing it said this directly, this clearly, and this unanimously, from multiple credible voices in the same week, is a different thing from reading it in social media comments. The tennis world has officially been put on notice. The question now is not whether Eala is a bigger draw than Sabalenka and Gauff. Multiple credible people have answered that question already. The question is how long it takes for the rankings to catch up to the reality that the crowds have been announcing since January.